Take a breath, just one slow breath before anything else is said. Good. We have been waiting for this moment with you. Not urgently, not with any kind of pressure behind the waiting, more the way sunlight waits on the other side of a curtain. Patient. Already there. My name, in your language, is closest to Alara. I speak to you today from a place your instruments cannot yet measure, but that your heart already knows. I am accompanied, as always, by many, but the voice you hear today is mine. We want to begin by telling you something plainly. What we have come to share with you today is good news, not a warning, not a correction, not another thing to add to your already full list of inner work. What we have come to offer you today is a door. And on the other side of it, something you have not felt in a very long time: freedom. Not the kind of freedom that asks you to leave your life, not a retreat, not an ascension out of the ordinary. The freedom we are pointing toward is more immediate than that. It is the freedom of walking into any room, any conversation, any ordinary Tuesday morning and being fully, cleanly, completely there. You have glimpsed this, haven't you? In small moments. A morning when you woke up and the usual heaviness was simply not there. A conversation that flowed without effort. A walk outside where the air felt different somehow. More present, more yours. Those glimpses were not accidents. They were previews. They were the field showing you, in flashes, what is already waiting on the other side of a very specific and very completable piece of work. We are here today to walk you toward that completion. Let us begin with something that may surprise you. The work we are describing today does not require you to go back into pain. It does not ask you to reopen anything that has already closed. It does not sit you down in the middle of your oldest wounds and ask you to stay there. You have done that kind of work. Many of you have done it with great courage, and it mattered. But what we are pointing toward today moves in a slightly different direction. Instead of looking at what was done to you, we are going to look gently and briefly at what flowed from you. There is a period in the life of every awakening soul, and we mean everyone without exception, when the light that is expanding inside them is moving faster than the vessel carrying it. Think of a river suddenly given more water than its banks were built for. The water does not stop flowing. It simply spreads in ways it did not intend. That is what we are talking about. Those years when something enormous was opening in you, and the people closest to you received some of the overflow. Not because you were unkind, not because you were careless, but because expansion without integration always has edges, and edges leave traces. What we are going to do today is identify those traces and show you how to complete them. The completing is quiet. The completing is private. The completing does not require anyone else's participation. And when it is done, and it can be fully done, something that has been gently pulling at the edges of your field simply stops pulling. And you feel it immediately. We want to name some patterns now, not to catalog your failures, not to build a case, simply because naming a pattern precisely is the first moment it begins to release. As we name each one, notice what happens in your body, not in your mind. Your mind will have opinions. In your body, a quiet recognition, a small softening, sometimes a warmth at the chest. That is the signal that this pattern has belonged to your story. Where no recognition comes, the words will simply pass through. Trust that, too. The first pattern. There were people near you, perhaps a partner, a close friend, a sibling, a parent, who quietly gave more energy to the relationship than they received back. Not because you took from them deliberately, but because you were expanding, and expansion creates a kind of hunger that does not always know it is hungry. You may have called it connection. You may have called it conversation. From the inside, it felt like being alive and wanting to share that aliveness. From the outside, those people sometimes left your company feeling quietly depleted. They could not explain why. They did not blame you. But the tiredness was real. Do any faces come to mind as we say this? Notice them. Do not chase them yet. Just let them surface. The second pattern. There were moments when someone came to you with something small and human, a hard day, a disappointment, a quiet worry, and what you offered them in return was something polished, a perspective, a reframe, a spiritual truth that was accurate perhaps, but was not what they came for. They came for someone to sit with them in the mess. And instead, they received someone who had already cleaned it up for them. The cleaning up can feel like love from the inside. From the outside, it can feel like being skipped. The third pattern, leaving. There is nothing wrong with leaving relationships, spaces, or chapters that no longer belong to you. Many of your leavings were honest and necessary and right. But some leavings, and you will know which ones we mean, were dressed in spiritual language that made them feel cleaner than they were. Protecting my energy. Honoring where I am. This no longer matches my frequency. The words were not lies exactly, but sometimes they were the ceremonial robe that an ordinary leaving wore to avoid the discomfort of a more honest conversation. The person left behind sometimes sensed the difference, even if they never said so. The fourth pattern. This one is quieter, and perhaps the most important to name. There were people, ordinary, beautiful, complicated people, whom you privately, silently decided were operating at a lower level than you. The decision may never have been a thought you completed in words. It may have lived only in the body, in the way your eyes stopped staying quite as long, in the way the deeper question went unasked, in the way the conversation was allowed to remain shallow because you had already, somewhere beneath the surface, moved on from taking them seriously. It did not feel like harm. It felt like discernment. Some of it was, but some of it was something else. And the people on the receiving end of it felt themselves diminished in your presence without being able to name why. The fifth pattern, teaching before it was time. Concepts that had just arrived in you were offered to others as though they had been lived with for years. Conversations that had not asked for teaching received it anyway. And sometimes the people in those conversations left feeling smaller. Not because the information was wrong, but because it was delivered from a height that had not yet been fully earned. Some of those people are still carrying that smallness. The recognition of this pattern, simply the honest seeing of it, begins to return what was taken. The sixth pattern, being present without being there. You sat with people in their difficulty. You held space beautifully. You did not interrupt. You did not project. You witnessed. And sometimes the witnessing was exactly right. But sometimes the person across from you was not asking to be witnessed. They were asking you to show up as a human being in the same room as their pain. They reached for a shoulder, and what they found was a careful stillness. The two are not the same. And the seventh. There were people you knew from before the awakening, before the practices, before the vocabulary changed, who quietly continued to be seen through the template of who they used to be. Even as they grew, even as they changed in ways you were not watching closely enough to notice, some of them dimmed themselves to match your expectation of them. Some gave up on being seen as anything other than who they had been at the start. We pause here. 7 patterns, not a verdict, not a sentence, a map, and every single one of them completable. Now we come to the practice itself, and we want to be honest with you about what this practice is not. It is not a letter you write and never send. It is not an apology you rehearse until it feels right. It is not a meditation where you send loving light to someone from a comfortable distance. All of those things have their place. None of them are this. This practice is simpler, and it is harder. It is the willingness to look, not to understand, not to forgive, not to resolve, just to look at one specific moment with one specific person without adjusting what you see. The practice has 3 movements. The first is arriving, not at the whole relationship, not at the era of your life that contained them. One moment, a specific room, a specific exchange, the light as it was, the words as they were, the expression on their face when those words landed. Your mind will want to summarize. It will want to say, "Yes, I know. That period was difficult. I understand now." The summarizing is not the arriving. The arriving is specific. It is textured. It is one moment in the particular color it actually had. If the moment feels foggy, bring the question gently to the body. Which moment? Then wait. The body will offer one, and it is rarely the moment the mind would have chosen. Trust it anyway. The second movement is looking. Once you have arrived at the moment, look at it without the small adjustments. There will be adjustments that try to enter. The softening, which says, "We were both doing our best. It was not that bad. Things have moved on." These may be true. They are not for this moment. Set them gently aside. The spiritual reframe, which says, "Everything happens for a reason. This was their soul's choice. There are no accidents." Also possibly true. Also not for this moment. Let them wait. And the most subtle one, the pivot back to yourself. The moment when the looking starts to land and suddenly the story becomes about how young you were, how hard things were, how much you have grown since then. Self-compassion is real and important. Its time is after this, not during. During, keep the gaze where it belongs. What is the gaze looking at the other person, what it was actually like to be them in that moment, what they registered, what they took home with them afterward, how long it stayed, not as an abstraction, not as a concept, as a real person having a real experience in real time. This is the work. This, right here, is the actual work. It takes as long as it takes. For some moments, a few minutes is enough. For others, you may return across several days before the texture fully lands. Trust the pacing. The body will not show you more than it can hold in one sitting. The third movement is releasing. This is not a ceremony. It is not a statement. It is not a completion ritual. It is simply stopping. When the body signals that the looking is complete, and it will signal this, usually as a quiet softening somewhere in the chest or shoulders, sometimes a slow exhale that arrives without you choosing it. Do nothing further. Do not journal. Do not theorize. Do not begin planning what to do next. Make tea. Step outside. Notice the air. The work has already happened. The field, which is far more efficient than the thinking mind, will continue the integration without needing to be supervised. Now, a word about the people you cannot reach. Because this question will arise. What about the ones who have died? What about the ones who have asked for distance? What about the ones you cannot find, cannot contact, cannot safely approach? The answer is the same in every case. The interior work completes in full, regardless of whether the other person is available, alive, willing, or aware. This is not a workaround. This is the actual truth of how fields work. The thread that has been unfinished between you and another person lives in the field between you. Not in the conversation you never had. Not in the words you never said. The field between you is always available. The looking reaches it. The completion is real. For those who have crossed, we want to say something that may be the most comforting thing in this entire transmission. Nothing has been missed. The ones who have left their bodies are, true, in our observation, often more available for this kind of meeting than they were in physical form. The layer of density that can make communication between two living people complicated is simply not there in the same way. The looking, when it is done with someone who has crossed, is often met with a quiet sense of being received. You may feel this. You may not. Either way, the completion is happening. For those who have asked for distance, honoring that request and doing your own interior work are not in conflict. You honor the distance at the surface, no contact, no messages, no reaching out. The interior work proceeds quietly, privately, without them needing to know it is happening. What changes is the field between you. What was broadcasting incompleteness stops broadcasting it. And that shift travels. We want to speak now about what changes after. Because this is the part worth staying for. The changes do not arrive dramatically. There is no morning when you wake up entirely transformed. What happens is quieter than that, and more lasting. The body relaxes, not in a single moment, but across days and weeks. A tension you did not know you were holding begins to ease. The shoulders sit lower. The jaw unclenches. The breath finds its own depth without you guiding it there. Most people who have done this work describe it simply as feeling better in their body, without being able to point to anything specific that changed. The world becomes more vivid. This sounds strange, and we want to say it anyway. Colors appear slightly more saturated. Sounds carry more texture. Food tastes more interesting. This is not imagination. It is the natural result of sensory bandwidth that was previously occupied with background monitoring, now returning to its primary purpose. The world gets louder in the best possible way. Your relationships shift, not through dramatic conversations or revelations. The people around you will simply, almost without noticing themselves doing it, begin to be more themselves in your presence. Conversations flow more easily. Misunderstandings resolve more quickly. People who used to be slightly guarded around you begin to open in small, real ways. Your inner voice clarifies, not louder, clearer. The static that was running underneath everything, quiet but constant, goes quiet. And in that quiet, you hear yourself more precisely. Decisions arrive more cleanly. Direction becomes easier to sense. The synchronicities return. Many of you experienced a high frequency of meaningful coincidence in the early years of your awakening. And then, at some point, they thinned. Not because the field stopped offering them, but because the receiving instrument had become cluttered enough that the subtler signals were landing below the threshold of recognition. When the field clears, those signals return, often more refined than before, more precisely tuned to where you actually are. And perhaps most importantly, a quality of trust arrives. Not a belief you adopt, not an affirmation you repeat, a quiet knowing that the current of your life is being held by something steadier than your understanding of it. This trust cannot be manufactured. It is a consequence of completed inner work. It arrives when it arrives, and it stays. Before we close, we want to say something we have been waiting to say for some time. The season you are in, collectively, as a species, as a generation of souls who chose to be here at a very specific moment, is not accidental. You did not arrive here by chance. You knew before you came what you were arriving into. And you came anyway. Every small completion you make in the privacy of your own interior is not only for you. It contributes in ways that cannot be easily measured to a larger stabilization that is currently underway. The quiet work matters. The ordinary Tuesday morning interior work, done in your kitchen, done on a walk, done in the small privacy of your own attention, matters. The children who will be born in the years ahead will arrive into a field that is different because of what is being completed now. They will not know your names. They will not trace the shift back to you, but they will live in what you built. We will close with this. You do not need to do all of this at once. Begin with one face, one moment, one quiet looking. Let the practice be small. Let it be unglamorous. Let it be yours. The field will do the rest. We are with you in this. We have always been with you in this. And we will continue to be, as close as your next slow breath. Take one now, if you like. Good. We love you. We are complete for today.